Mrs. Jennifer Matthew is a beautiful and wealthy lady in her early 30s. She is a dream of every man to date and to marry. She is doing very well as an aircraft pilot. She has many properties in different countries, like lands, houses, cars, and some business in different countries. Jennifer Matthews stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of JFK International Airport's pilot lounge, watching a Boeing 787 gracefully touch down on runway 13R. Her own uniform was crisp and pristine, 4 golden stripes gleaming on each shoulder. At 34, she had achieved what most pilots only dreamed of: a senior position with a major airline, flying international routes, and a salary that allowed her to invest in properties across multiple countries. "Captain Matthews, your flight plan is ready for review," called out Sandra, one of the ground staff, holding a tablet. Jennifer smiled, taking the device. This was her life: precise, ordered, successful. Her next flight would take her to London, a city where she owned a charming townhouse in Notting Hill. She had similar properties in Dubai, Singapore, Vancouver, and Sydney. Smart investments made during her 12-year career had built her a small empire worth over $100 million. It was her best friend Maria's wedding that changed everything. The late June afternoon was perfect, with soft sunlight filtering through the trees of the upscale Long Island venue. Jennifer sat at her assigned table, watching the festivities with quiet contentment. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, "please welcome our chairman of the occasion, Mr. Christian Anderson." The man who stood up commanded immediate attention. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, with salt and pepper hair that spoke of distinguished maturity. His smile lit up the room as he began his speech. "Love," he began, his voice rich and confident, "is like flight. It requires trust, courage, and the willingness to soar into the unknown." Jennifer felt her heart skip a beat at the aviation reference. Throughout the reception, Christian seemed to make it rain money: generous gifts to the couple, extravagant tips for the staff, and an overall air of elegant wealth that wasn't gaudy but impossible to ignore. "I'm a pilot," Jennifer said. Christian's eyes sparkled with interest as they shared drinks at the wedding after-party. "That's fascinating. I actually run Anderson Aviation Manufacturing. We're one of the leading private aircraft manufacturers in North America." Jennifer leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "Really? I wasn't familiar with the name." "We're more behind the scenes," he explained smoothly. "Government contracts, private clients. The real money's in customization and specialized equipment." They talked for hours about aviation, travel, and life. Christian was charming, knowledgeable, and seemed to understand her world perfectly. When they exchanged numbers at the end of the night, it felt natural, meant to be. Their dating life was a whirlwind of luxury and connection. Christian took her to exclusive restaurants, flew her on private jets, which he claimed were from his company's fleet, and showed her a world even more luxurious than the one she already knew. "You understand the industry," he would say. "You know how these things work." And she did, or thought she did. Every explanation he gave about his business made sense to her trained ear. Every detail seemed to check out, and his knowledge of aircraft was impressive. Late one night, as they sat on the balcony of his supposed penthouse, he held her hand. "Jennifer, I've never met anyone who gets me like you do. Who understands this world like you do." She felt the same way. This is 3 months into their relationship. Now their relationship is bound with love, caring, and understanding. Jennifer has lust deeply in love with Christian. Christian called her, his voice excited and sounded so angelic. "Baby, I have amazing news," he said. "The company is doing a special promotion for our 20th anniversary. We're offering personal aircraft at unprecedented prices, like the aircraft model, Airbus A380, engine, Rolls-Royce, Engine Alliance. Actually, the price is currently $350 million only, but the company is giving it out at the sum of $250 million. Jennifer's heart raced. "That's incredible, but—" "I know it's still a lot," he said. "But think about it, your own aircraft. No more commercial flying for your company. You could start your own charter service. The maintenance would be covered for 5 years under our warranty." It made sense, too much sense. The numbers worked out perfectly with her assets. The next week was a blur of bank appointments and wire transfers. Jennifer liquidated her international properties, took loans against her remaining assets, and even borrowed against her future earnings from the airline. The banks were willing to work with her. She had an impeccable credit history and significant collateral. Just transfer it to the company account, Christian said, providing details for what looked like a legitimate corporate account. We'll have the paperwork ready in 4 hours. The airplane is already being prepared for delivery. Jennifer sent the money, $250 million, her entire life's worth and more. Christian kissed her, promised to call her in 4 hours' time, and he left to prepare the delivery documents. 4 hours passed. No call. 6 hours passed. Straight to voicemail. 8 hours passed. The number was disconnected. The number you are calling is currently switched off. The customer care replied. Reality hit like a crash landing. The company address Christian had given her led to an empty office building. His penthouse apartment had been rented short-term with fake credentials. Everything had been a lie. This sounds like a dream. She shouted, "Please wake me up. This is a nightmare. I don't like this." The first bank called within a week, then the second, then the third. Jennifer sat in her apartment, surrounded by default notices and demands for payment, her hands shaking as she tried to dial Christian's number for the 1,000th time. The airline's HR department summoned her for a meeting. They were concerned about her recent behavior, the massive loans, and the potential for compromise. She assured them she was fine, but her eyes were hollow. Her first panic attack came during a transatlantic flight. Her co-pilot had to take over when she froze during a routine approach to Heathrow. The passengers never knew how close they came to disaster. Captain Matthews, her supervisor, said afterward, "We need you to take some time off." But time off meant no income, and the banks were circling. One by one, they came for their collateral. Her properties went first. The London townhouse, the Dubai apartment, everything she had built over 12 years of careful investment. The airline fired her after the third incident in the cockpit. Her hands had been shaking too badly to manage the controls, and her co-pilot had reported her. They were kind about it, offered her a ground position at reduced pay, but her pride couldn't take it. Depression settled in like a heavy fog. She stopped answering calls, stopped opening mail. The remaining banks took everything: her car, her primary residence, even her professional certificates and licenses that she'd framed so proudly. 6 months after meeting Christian, Jennifer Peterson sat on a park bench near JFK, watching planes take off and land. She wore clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks. Her once immaculate appearance was now disheveled, her eyes vacant. Occasionally, she would talk to passers-by about being a pilot, about owning houses around the world, about her boyfriend who ran an aircraft company. Most hurried past, avoiding eye contact with what they assumed was just another homeless person with delusions. "I used to fly those," she would whisper as each plane roared overhead. "I used to be somebody." Some days she could still feel the controls in her hands, still see Christian's smile, still feel the pride of her accomplishments. But those moments were becoming rarer, replaced by a foggy confusion that made it hard to distinguish past from present. Reality from fantasy. The woman who had once commanded massive aircraft with confidence now couldn't even command her own thoughts. And somewhere out there, Christian was probably already working on his next target, his next elaborate scheme, his next victim. The winter that followed Jennifer's downfall was particularly harsh in New York. She had taken to sleeping in airport parking structures, drawn to the familiar sounds of commercial aircraft engines that once marked her success. The same security guards who used to salute her as Captain Matthews now gently shooed her away, pretending not to recognize the woman they had once respected. Jennifer goes into depression, not knowing what to do. This affected her mental. One cold morning, she found herself talking to her reflection in a bathroom mirror at the airport terminal. "Pre-flight checklist," she mumbled, her fingers moving through the air as if touching invisible switches. "Fuel levels. Check. Navigation systems. Check." A cleaner found her there hours later, still going through the motions, her eyes glazed and unfocused. "Ma, please, you can't stay here," the cleaner said kindly, recognizing the lost soul before her. "I'm the captain," Jennifer insisted, her voice cracking. "I have to complete the pre-flight checks. The passengers are waiting." Spring brought no renewal for Jennifer. Her mind, once sharp enough to handle complex flight calculations, now struggled to separate memory from fantasy. She began carrying a tattered pilot's logbook she had rescued from a dumpster, filling its pages with rambling accounts of imaginary flights. "Today I flew to Paris," she wrote in shaky handwriting. "Christian met me at Charles de Gaulle with roses. He showed me the new plane he's building for me. Just 2 more weeks until delivery." The local coffee shop owners who remembered her from her pilot days would sometimes give her free coffee. Watching sadly as she sat for hours, drawing detailed diagrams of aircraft systems on napkins and talking to herself about fuel calculations and weather patterns. "You see," she would tell anyone who would listen, "the thrust-to-weight ratio is critical for takeoff. Christian taught me that. He's coming back with my plane. He promised." Summer arrived, and with it came the wedding anniversary of her friend Maria, the event where she had met Christian. Jennifer found herself outside the same venue, now wearing clothes from a homeless shelter, her once perfect hair matted and unkempt. "I'm here for the wedding," she told the confused security guard. "I'm the maid of honor. Christian is waiting for me inside." When they tried to turn her away, she became agitated, screaming about stolen planes and betrayed trust. "He has my money," she shrieked. "He has my life. The planes are waiting. I have to fly them." The police came and one officer recognized her name when they ran it through their system. "Wait a minute," he said. "Isn't this the pilot who got scammed by that investment fraudster last year?" But Jennifer was beyond hearing them, lost in her own world of endless flight plans and broken promises. By autumn, Jennifer's grip on reality had slipped further. She began hearing the constant roar of phantom engines in her head, drowning out the real world. Her conversations became a confused mixture of pilot jargon and desperate pleas to an absent of Christian. "Tower, this is Captain Matthews requesting emergency clearance," she would say into a broken cell phone she carried everywhere. "Christian's coming with the new aircraft. We need priority landing." Other homeless people in the area learned to give her space when she was having these episodes. Sometimes she would spend hours standing in the rain, looking up at the sky, her arms outstretched like wings. "The atmospheric conditions are perfect," she would say to no one in particular. "Christian says, we'll file the flight plan tomorrow. Just need to transfer the funds. All my houses for one perfect plane." One day, a former colleague spotted her wandering near the airport perimeter fence. Sarah Chen had been her co-pilot on several international routes and barely recognized the shell of the woman before her. "Jennifer." Sarah approached carefully. "Jennifer, it's Sarah. We used to fly together." Jennifer turned, her eyes briefly focusing. "Sarah. Did Christian send you? Is the plane ready?" "Jennifer, there is no plane. Christian was a fraudster, remember? He took your money." "No, no, no." Jennifer shook her head violently. "You're wrong. He's the CEO of Anderson Aviation Manufacturing. We're getting married in his private jet. All the papers are signed." Sarah tried to help, offered money, a place to stay, but Jennifer backed away, clutching her logbook. "I have to go. I'm late for my pre-flight briefing. Christian's waiting." Winter returned and Jennifer's delusions deepened. She created an elaborate fantasy world where she still commanded respect and authority. She would stand outside bank buildings, telling passers-by she owned the entire block. "My property portfolio spans 5 continents," she would announce proudly, her clothes now little more than rags. "Christian manages it all. He's very good with money, you see. Very good." Some days she would sit in the airport observation area, conducting imaginary radio conversations with control towers around the world. "This is Captain Matthews, requesting permission for approach to Dubai International. My fiancé is waiting with the documents. Won 250 million. That's all it takes to own the sky." Local shop owners started noticing how she would collect airplane-shaped clouds from magazines, carefully cutting them out and storing them in her worn logbook. "My fleet," she would explain seriously. "Christian helps me maintain them. He's very busy, you know, CEO of a very important company." One day, she had a complete breakdown when she saw a man who looked similar to Christian entering a coffee shop. She ran after him, grabbing his arm, babbling about wire transfers and delivery documents. "Please," she begged the startled stranger, "please just sign the papers. I gave you everything. Just give me my plane." The police were called again, and this time they had to physically restrain her as she screamed about stolen dreams and betrayed trust. Spring came again, and Jennifer's world had shrunk to the few blocks around the airport. She spent her days creating intricate stories about her imagined wealth and success, completely disconnected from her current reality. "You see that plane taking off?" she would tell anyone who would listen. "I own 10 just like it. Christian keeps them in a special hangar. He's coming to pick me up in one today." Or maybe it was yesterday. "The flight plans are all filed." She had taken to wearing a makeshift pilot's uniform crafted from discarded clothes, complete with paper strips pinned to the shoulders to represent captain's stripes. The local homeless shelter workers would gently try to help her, but she insisted she didn't need assistance. "I have houses everywhere," she would say proudly. "Paris, London, Dubai. Christian has the keys. He's bringing them with the plane. Just 2 more hours. Always 2 more hours." By the second year of her homelessness, Jennifer had created such an intricate alternative reality that she could no longer recognize the truth even when it stood right in front of her. Her former airline placed her photo in their employee newsletter, warning about the dangers of investment fraud and offering support services to staff. But Jennifer was beyond help. She spent her days navigating an imaginary world where she was still successful, still respected, still whole. She drew complex flight paths in the dirt, calculated fuel consumption for planes that didn't exist, and held lengthy conversations with an imaginary Christian about their future together. "The banks understand now," she would tell the pigeons that gathered around her. Christian explained everything. "They're giving all my houses back. We're getting married in Singapore next week." Or was it last week? "The flight plan is already filed." As her third year of homelessness approached, Jennifer's delusions had become her only reality. She no longer recognized old colleagues who tried to help her. In her mind, she was still flying, still successful, still waiting for Christian to return with her plane. She created elaborate schedules written on cardboard boxes, detailing imaginary flights to cities around the world. Each night, she would sleep clutching her tattered logbook, murmuring flight coordinates and fuel calculations in her sleep. If you're eager to see how this story unfolds, please subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Type continue if you want to see episode 2. Your feedback will help to shape the future videos on this channel.